Everyone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Friday class. I am so excited to have you here. Thank you for showing up. It's the end of January, right? And we have some exciting speakers, special presenters for you today. And so I want you to get out a notepad and a pen so that you could take some notes. As always, use the reactions button on the bottom of the page to let us know how you're feeling during the presentation and utilize that chat feature. Drop your thoughts and your questions there. We are monitoring that as well. And if your question didn't get answered, we will circle back around to it at the end. Okay. So this class is being recorded. It will be posted on my YouTube channel if you want to share this at another time. And I would like to go ahead and pin my two special speakers. Let's see if we can work that out. This is Sue Ann, my friend, and this is Heidi. So I've got you side by side on my screens. If anything takes place and goes wonky on your side, you just let me know, okay?
Okay.
I have been introducing this class for a couple of weeks now. And so every one of us here are excited. We are ready to receive whatever you have to give us. We know that you are authors of that beautiful book, and you're going to be walking us through some of those things. I did tell most everybody here to bring their top 10 oils because you will be sharing how we could use those in the process of grief. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much for spending time with us and being here. And I am just going to leave the rest of the time to you, okay?
Oh, that's
Thank
wonderful. Thank you so much, sweet Mapu. So Mapu and I have known each other for many years now. I think it's probably going on 7 or 8 years. And as you all know, and you're so fortunate to be in this group with her, she truly is the epitome of a heart-led leader. And I just think it's really wonderful that she's bringing this topic to you today because it is such an emotional topic. And even just the word grief can bring up so much emotion. And so, if she is a heart led leader, I know that all the people in this group who've gravitated towards her and to the leaders who work with her, you also have hearts of compassion. I'm sure many of you are essential oil wellness advocates and customers in her group and faith filled, talented, capable women. So, what Heidi and I have prepared for you today, being that it is January, and this is the time of the year that maybe perhaps we are more reflective than other times in the year, right? Where we're kind of looking backward and saying, okay, this is where maybe I feel like I've been stuck or I've fallen short, or these are areas that I really want to improve upon. And so we can tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially as women, that we've got to get it right. And maybe some of you are feeling like I have in past Januaries, towards the end of the month, you already might feel a little bit deflated. You already might feel a little bit stuck. But we're here to give you some hope. And that is one of the things that we have kind of folded into every page of our book is hope, finding hope amidst loss and grief. And so hopefully by what you're going to listen to tonight, you'll realize that maybe you were never stuck at all, but what was resurfacing for you was grief or loss. And so as we share our testimonies or our stories of what led Heidi and I together, because we were complete strangers, we're not even on the same doTERRA team, but it was really just a God-led mission and ministry that brought us together. So we want to share our personal stories with grief. And then hopefully while you're listening, this is not just our story, but hopefully you'll hear maybe different forms of grief, some non-traditional forms of loss. And you might be thinking of yourself and give yourself permission like, oh, aha, yes, I went through that too. I can acknowledge now that maybe this is what was holding me back, or maybe there are people in your life who, as after we tell our stories and we dive into the top 10 oils and go through the protocols and really the whole parameters of the book, maybe there will be a couple of little nuggets that pop out that you can employ in your own life and you can share with others. Okay. Does that sound good? All right. So I'm going to dive in. So I think a lot of times when you hear that somebody is an author of a book, you assume that they are an expert. And Heidi and I are always the first to say, we are not grief experts. We have gone through a lot of grief in kind of a short period of time in our lives. But what we've realized is it's a universal experience. So many people have gone through grief. And so you, sadly, you are an expert as well. And I feel like we don't always realize that when we are going through grief or loss, sometimes those emotions get trapped in our bodies. And we just need to be cognizant that our emotions and our physical ailments or the physical attributes of grief, it's a reality, right? That one affects the other. And so I just want you to kind of be open-minded and mindful today of when when we're kind of talking about that. And the whole purpose of our talk today is to hopefully bring about some healing. Grief is not something that you can open and shut a door on. And this is why we did this is my well-loved copy of our book, Facing the Waves, working through grief with essential oils and stories of hope, because the waves of grief can resurface. And just like you would never go to an ocean and turn your back to the ocean, you need to know that grief can and probably will resurface at times in your life that just take you by storm, right? Kind of knock you over like that unexpected sleeper wave. And hopefully today, by going through some protocols, you'll be prepared if and when that happens, and you'll be able to not judge that and say, oh gosh, why am I here again? You can say, aha, I'm here again. And just have the mindfulness to recognize it and say, but that's okay because I have some new tools. All right. So a little bit of my story, and then I'll kind of toss over to Heidi. I'm an only child. I'm a Chicagoland native, and I grew up. It was no coincidence now to learn that my Clifton Strengths #1 strength is responsibility. Growing up as an only child, I had a difficult childhood. I also had a great childhood, kind of a gamut of emotions. But my father was a paranoid schizophrenic and very violent. It was a very violent, tumultuous childhood. And so when I was 18 and my dad quickly passed away, boy, that just kind of bowled me over with emotions that, for many years I had a lot of regret and a lot of shame and a lot of unresolved feelings of like, why do I feel relieved? Well, I had abuse in my childhood. And so yes, there was a sense of relief, but of course, I mourned him. I loved my dad, and I loved him for all of his strengths and all of his goodness as well. So grief can be really complicated. And I just remember being so worried about my mother, and she took it so much harder than I ever could have imagined. This was the first time I had ever seen my mother cry in my life. And I was at my freshman first semester away at college. And I remember just leaving Post-it notes all around the house so that I could hide these Post-its, and she would have little rays of sunshine and every now and then get these little love notes from me, and just know that I was thinking about her at that moment. But what I wasn't sure about how to handle was my own grief. And so I had a really delayed grief about midway through the winter after my father passed away a week before Christmas when I was 18. And when it hit me hard, I felt very isolated and alone. And I was in a sorority house of over 107 girls with a flurry of activity. So I certainly wasn't alone, but I felt very alone because up until that time, so many people none of them had encountered grief before, right? We were all so young. And so in that moment, I made a decision that moving forward, whenever I saw somebody grieving, I would be their person. I would be the person to hug them or talk to them and not avoid them, and like not be afraid to have the difficult conversations, and to be the one who expressed myself, like really express myself in a greeting card, and to make meals for them and things like that. So grief was very impactful for me. As life went on, I had a lot of unexplained medical issues, and ultimately, when I got married, I really had a hard time getting pregnant. So I dealt with infertility, which is also a form of loss. And I finally hit the jackpot with my triplet boys, who are now freshmen in college, and my baby girl, who is 2 years younger than them. She's a junior in high school. But we had one very sick little boy coming home from the hospital, and it took about 7 years for us to fully diagnose his issue. And we almost lost him and spent a week at Children's Hospital when he was 7 years old. And I remember in that moment, kind of making a deal with God because, I thought I had the control to do that. Turns out I didn't. But I remember being on my hands and knees and saying, God, I had just learned about natural medicine, and I was starting to learn how to utilize food as medicine. And I remember saying, Lord, if you will allow me to work with other women and be their health advocate, please spare me my child. And I promise you that I will dedicate the rest of my life to helping other women trust their intuition. And I was restless for about a year and a half, but ultimately he brought me doTERRA. And when I met Jessica Moultrie and heard her introduce herself as a wellness advocate, I knew this was my calling. So my friends, I share with you my story, a little snippet of my story, because oftentimes our pain is the very thing that leads us to our purpose. My background is in TV news. I was a writer producer for many years. I've written children's books. I've written, everything under the sun. I was a marketing consultant, but never did I see myself using my communication to co-author a book on grief or to be in the wellness industry. But isn't it funny how life happens, right? And so I really do believe that we are here today to share with one another. The way that Heidi and I met was pretty cool. I was actually on an incentive trip for doTERRA. This one was in Mexico, and I was waiting for a Sea-Doo, like a jet ski to come. And I was talking with her upline. Come to find out, her upline. Many of you know Orion Matheny. He's really pretty incredible, and he was there. We had become Facebook friends. And at this stage of my life, in my, I guess, mid-40s, I had lost 5 really significant people in my life, in addition to my father. And we had in 1 year lost both of our senior citizen dogs. And they were kind of my surrogate children during that 5-year time when I was trying to get pregnant with my babies, my human babies. And so that is kind of a loss that a lot of our society kind of like dismisses. They kind of poo-poo it, like, yes, I'm really sorry you lost your dog. Like, it's a dog. They kind of almost give like degrees. I think society gives degrees of grief. But if any of you have ever really known the unconditional love of a dog, I truly believe there's a reason why God takes his name and spells it backward and gives us these little angels on earth. And so I was struggling, going through a hard time, and I had seen that Heidi, who was a friend of Orion's, had posted on his Facebook that she was teaching an essential oil class on grief using the top 10 oils. And so I made a connection with her, attended that class, had her teach that class to my doTERRA team, and really the rest is history. I remember saying to her, this class is so powerful, and I love that you're not using a lot of obscure oils. You're really teaching people how to utilize the top 10 most basic oils, the basic kit that they receive when they first sign up with doTERRA. And I think that's really brilliant. And I think that there's a book here, Heidi. I really think God is putting it in my heart to share with you that you should write a book. And really, again, the rest is history. Heidi will kind of take it from here, but she is a lawyer and didn't really at the time have the confidence, and kind of said, I don't know about this. Like, yes, like, thank you for sharing this with me. That's a great idea, but like, how do you go about writing a book? And I'm like, I know you can do it. Like, literally just listen to the recording of our Zoom call, and the book is totally there. Um, about a year into that relationship, and I would kind of hound her and be like, how's it going? How's it going? God really put it on my heart to say, Sue Ann, why don't you help her? You're a writer. And this can be a beautiful synergy of two people, kind of combining their missions. And so if you are listening to this and you are someone who has kind of dismissed a calling, and you'll know what that calling is, something that a talent that you have, a gift that you have. And if you've ever dismissed it and said, no, I'm too busy, because that's what I did. At the time, things were really busy. I think I had just come back from Prague. I was doing a lot with my doTERRA business. I'm an active mom of 4 kids. And I kind of dismissed it like, oh no, Lord, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. Well, then you know what happened? COVID. And I was living in California at the time, and COVID shut down our state big time. And guess what? My calendar opened up, right? Because I wasn't able to do a lot of teaching in person. So Heidi and I actually wrote this book together online. And, she was in West Virginia, I was in California. And so, a lot of times, and I love this quote, that God does not call the equipped. God equips the called. So if you feel like there's a calling, or there's a strength, or there's something that you're passionate about and you want to share, just jump in and let the Lord lead you one foot after the other, because that's exactly what he did for Heidi and I. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her share her testimony. And then what we're going to do is kind of talk to you about a little bit about our book, and how there's really 3 parts to it. And then we're going to focus on that 3rd part, which is the essential oil protocol. So when you walk away today, you're going to have some tangible tools to help you with your grief and loss.
Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
First of all, every time I get on one of these webinars, my nose starts running and I start coughing, and I'm not sick. It's so crazy. We did a podcast this one day, and the woman who was hosting the podcast said, that is your body saying this is not safe. Like, this sharing is not safe. And so I always sort of remind myself of that, but it's so crazy, and it happens every single time. So if that's happening, that's what's going on. I'm fighting my body back, though. I'm like, this is safe. This is a safe place to be. So my name is Heidi. As Sue said, I live in West Virginia, and I've lived here my whole life. I have 3 kids, and they're all spread out. I have 19, 13, and 9. So my kids are in every stage of life right now. And I am a lawyer. I'm general counsel for a tech company, and I just celebrated my 10-year anniversary with doTERRA. And I'm just so blessed that it came into my life. I still can't believe everything that it has brought me and my family. So I actually, I've been doing the Yoga by Adriene 30-day challenge starting at the beginning of the year. Today, I just did my 25th day of yoga in a row. And in the middle of that, I did it right before this. Of course, it was the sweatiest day of yoga, was right before this webinar. But she said, during that, she said, just give yourself permission to be present and to just really feel the feelings today. And I just thought it was so interesting that that was happening right before this webinar, because this is something that's not easy to sit in, and it's not easy to talk about, and it's not easy to bring up. I always say it's kind of like the party killer. I'll be with like a group of friends, and somebody will bring up that I wrote a book, and I'm like, yeah, I co-authored a book, and everybody's like, what's it about? And I'm like, grief. And then I feel like the kind of the room deflate, right? So it's not a comfortable thing to talk about, but everybody goes through it. So it's so important that we take it head on, feel those feelings, and just really address it. So I'm going to rewind it's almost exactly 17 years ago, when my family got the call that nobody wants to get. And my little brother, who was my only sibling, was killed in a car accident. He was 24 years old. His name was Atlee. He was as original as his name might suggest. He was total hippy dippy, would have loved doTERRA so much. And he was just himself. That was one thing that I always said. I was kind of the Alex P. Keaton in my family of hippies. And he was just, my mom always sort of gave him permission to just totally be himself. And he really was. And all of a sudden, he was gone. And with that, all of my sort of childhood memories were gone. He was the one person who, went on vacation with me and knew what it was like to be raised in our house. And it really just, the only word I could come up with to describe what it was like to lose him was just unanchored. I just felt so unanchored. And my nuclear family was gone, and it was something that I just never anticipated, of course, going through. And I always say I lost my mom that day too, because understandably she was never the same. I mean, how could you be? I don't mean to sound blaming, but so I really, in a lot of ways, lost her too that day. And I just remember, I didn't know what to do with myself. I would stay up all night and sort of surf the internet and try to find reasons, I don't know, and try to find people who were a little bit ahead of me in that journey, because I would tell myself they've made it 2 more days, so you can make it these 2 days too. And I have to tell you that this was so many years ago, that I was not laying in bed on my phone. I was in our home office on a computer, because that was the only way you could be on the internet. So I would just kind of stay up all night and just try to make sense of things, because it was just so hard to do. And I just did the best I could to handle things, right? I'm a firstborn girl. We just take charge. So I did the best I could. And I really thought that I had worked through things and gotten, through it. Because unfortunately, my life had to go on. I had a child at the time and a job, and I was trying to take care of my mom. And so I thought I had handled it for myself. Until about 10 years after that, I was at doTERRA leadership when it was in Orlando. And I was sitting in my seat with my friends. Orion was there, my best friend Angel, who is in chapter 2 of the book. I had a whole group of friends. You know how you sit with your friends. And someone was speaking on stage, and just totally unexpected to me, started talking about her father passing away recently. And she said she went to Tim Hortons to get a tea. And she said, they just handed it to me like nothing had happened. And I get so emotional, because I remembered that when Atlee died. I remembered thinking, people are getting mail and pizza, and they're doing all of these regular things, and our whole world is upside down. And I was angry, and I was so confused. And when she said that from the stage, I felt that all over again. It just hit me. And I just started sobbing in my seat, sobbing in my seat at leadership, right in the middle of leadership. So my friends were rubbing my back and, trying to help me calm down. And clearly I hadn't handled it, clearly I hadn't handled it. And I realized right then that I had this unresolved grief that I was carrying with me, that was just totally triggered right then. And somebody actually, who I didn't know, sent a note from a few rows back, and asked for my phone number. And she sent me a text that said, I don't know what you're going through, but please know that you are loved. And she took a picture of that moment, of my friends with their hands on my back. And she is actually also in the book. It turned out that her son, unfortunately, had been murdered. And she is one of our chapters in the book as well. So it's just so interesting to me to look back and see all of the people that God placed in my life, and the things that God led me through to bring me, to this point with Sue Ann. But along the way, many people had always said, you kind of just know what to say, and you always know what to send, and you always know when I'm having a bad day. And I even remember like recently I remembered that like almost 20 years ago, a really close friend of my parents, who was actually my brother's godmother, her husband died. And she was widowed young, and they didn't have any kids. And I remembered this one day just saying, she probably thinks she has nothing to live for at this point. Like she's so devastated. And I sat down, and I was like probably 25 years old, and I sat down and I wrote her a letter. And I said, like, you have something to live for. You are loved. Because God just told me that she needed this message. And actually, like, we've never spoken of it. I don't even know if she remembers it, but grief has just been something that has always like pulled on me. And I can see it in people's faces, and it's just something like it's kind of my thing. And so after all of this happened at leadership, my best friend Angel, who's also my upline, she said, "You need to write a class." She had lost a child, and she said, "You need to turn this into a class on essential oils for grief. Nobody talks about this." So I sat down and at my kitchen table, and I drug all my books out, and I put together this class. And I made sure that I really wanted it to be the top 10 oils. I wanted it to be super basic oils. And what I always say is, I didn't want people to say, my mom passed away, so I need to get myrrh. I wanted people to say, I've started with this top 10 kit, and I have all the things I need in my toolkit to be able to address these issues, both physically and emotionally. And that was really, really important to me. So I sat down with my books, my top 10 list. Some of them, like oregano, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, I didn't know how it was going to fit in. Honestly, how does oregano fit in? I didn't know how lemon was going to fit in. But I just started compiling it and outlining it and putting it together. I put a class on the calendar so that I would make myself finish, because I'm really bad about starting things and not finishing them. And so I ended up teaching this class to Suanne, and then like she said, she suggested that I turn it into a book. We ended up working together. I tried so hard to say no, no, thank you, God, I am good. It's like, I'm good. But he kept coming back and coming back and coming back. It was very clear that this was something that absolutely needed to happen. And we finally met in person in Nashville. I kind of stowed away on the Diamond Retreat with my friends because Suanne was going to be there, and I had never met her. We had worked together every Sunday morning from West Virginia to California, and we had never met. So we finally got to meet in person. And right then she talked earlier about how her dogs had passed away. And right then she said, "Aren't you from West Virginia?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said, "My dogs that passed away, they came from West Virginia." And I was like, "Really?" And so she said, "Are you close to Shinston? Have you ever heard of Shinston?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's my husband's hometown. It's 10 minutes from my house." And so her dogs came from my Humane Society a bit, essentially. So like my daughters volunteered there. We've donated there. So it was totally crazy. And like I said, God just kept saying, "Okay, here you go, here you go, here you go." So um, even though we had never met, our strengths just worked really, really well together and complemented each other. And we put this all together from a huge distance. And we know that so many people are hurting. And I see that Mapuano said that's called passion. We are passionate about this. This has become our ministry, and we are just trying to share as many tools as we can to help you guys and as many people as possible, because we know that everybody experiences grief. And like lately, it's so funny. I love Hallmark movies. My family makes fun of me. I have a sweatshirt that says Hallmark Channel #1 fan. But on the weekends, I wake up before everybody else. I sneak downstairs. I make a cup of fiber with a little bit of oils in it, and I sit and watch some Hallmark movies. But every book I read, every Hallmark movie I watch has had a major loss in it. Every single one is in the plot. And it's everywhere. So we're all experiencing it. You hear that art imitates life, and that's what's happening. So we have tools. And you guys, you brought your top 10 oils tonight, right? So you have we're going to go through a few ways that you can use them. So in ways that you hadn't even thought of before. And we're going to tell you how oregano even plays in.
Oh, I love that. Virtual hug to Heidi. So we've been doing a lot of virtual hugs for several years now. So I think the really cool thing too is that in our book, we always say that when we do finally meet people in person, because, you know, this is wonderful that we get together this way, but it's been so amazing to actually meet people like knee to knee, toe to toe, hug people at leadership and at convention and talk to them and hear their stories. And a lot of times I will just get goosebumps and think to myself, oh my gosh, I think you're the reason we edited that section 18 times. And like that paragraph, I think was meant for you. I think what's really cool is to see how God ordained this ministry and actually had us write certain things for certain people that we are now encountering. And the really exciting thing is it could be some of you right here tonight. And that is really what's so exciting to me. Now, maybe you won't go off and write a book on grief, but I want you to think about how that applies to your own life, what you learned tonight, what you learned through doTERRA, the different protocols you learn, things that just keep playing over and over in your mind. Take a moment and think, why am I having that reoccurring thought? Or, you know, why does this keep coming up for me as a theme in my life? Just like the theme of grief has for us, because maybe it's not a grief ministry, but there might be something else for you that is your gift or your calling. And so I really hope that you'll not just walk away with grief protocols, but also with a little time to reflect and maybe even journal. And we do have journal questions in this book to really think about, like, how can you make the most impact in a way that nobody else can do except you. So before we go into the protocol, and we're kind of going to do it rapid fire because I know we only have an hour together. But let's just kind of briefly talk about, Heidi, if we could kind of talk about how we put this book together. So Heidi referenced tonight some special people that we have featured in chapters in the book. And so the way we put together this book, can you guys see it? I don't know if I'm in a tiny square on the top or not. I don't know if you guys can see it, but
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Oh, you can
and
see
we
it.
can
Okay,
see
great.
how your nails match your Post-it.
Oh, these nails need to get redone pretty quickly. So facing the waves, working through grief with essential oils and stories of hope. So we wanted to do more than just give people protocols. What we did, have any of you ever read the series Chicken Soup for the Soul? Anybody? So it's a little bit like that. Yes, we're both Hallmark people. We like happy endings. It's not realistic. They're, you know, but what I will tell you is even in the hardship and even in the pain, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up, even in the grief and even in the loss, the people that we know, and Heidi and I each interviewed several people who we start each chapter out with a story. And so it might be a story of grief. You know, Angel lost a child. There might be a story of the loss of a spouse or the loss of a sibling or a loss of a father or a mother or a loss of a situation. 2020 is our first chapter. So we always say that grief is not just the loss of a person, it's the loss of a situation that turned out very differently than you anticipated. So that could be infertility, it could be a loss of a job, it could be a big move, a divorce. There's lots of different types of grief. And so we tried to really represent as many different forms of grief as we could in this book. And we really took the time to interview these people and give them time and reverence. Maybe we would diffuse and we would have, you know, an hour set aside. And I can tell you, we could only do, you know, one of these every couple of days or one a week because they were emotional for us to really talk to these people about, you know, how they were feeling. What did grief feel like for them? Like, can you give some adjectives? How would you personify this? And have them tell their stories. And so these books, these chapters are really, the stories are a tribute to the person who was lost, as well as the person honoring them. And there's a little bit of wisdom in every single story. And so I think what we have found is people have said, you know, many people will read it through like a novel because it can read like a novel with the different stories, and they might sit down and read it in a 2-hour setting. And some people read, you know, and can just kind of handle one story at a time, and then they read the protocol. But there's something for everyone here where you might say, yeah, that is exactly what I was feeling, or that is what grief felt like for me. But there might be another time that you can pick it up again as a resource tool and say, grief feels different to me today, or this other type of grief that I'm going through, now I need another resource because I need a different oil to work with that. We have different quotes in here. And because many of the people that we have been working with are also wellness advocates or doTERRA customers, in our doTERRA culture, we are personal development culture, right? And so that's why we end each chapter with 3 discussion questions, 3 reflection questions. If this is how you're feeling, you know, you can answer these questions and try to work through these feelings and emotions and the physical components also attached to them. So, okay, without further ado, we're going to go through the top 10. Now, there are some additional bonus chapters. So yes, we go through the top 10, but there are 5 other chapters that go through, like serenity is in there, console, I heard somebody reference. So there's some of the emotional
Balance,
oils, different blends are in there as well. Okay, so Heidi, you kick it off with oregano.
Okay, so oregano was the one, right? I was like, how is this going to fit in? But it turns out that oregano is the oil of attachment, non-attachment, sorry. And so it helps us detach from a situation that didn't turn out the way we thought it would. And that's really how Sue-Ann and I define grief a lot of times, because it isn't just death, it's so many things. And we can grieve the loss of a job and just situational, the loss of a friend. So it helps us feel more adaptable. It's also physically a great immune support for when we're not taking care of ourselves. You know, when somebody passes away or we're struggling with something, we're not sleeping well, we're not eating right, we're not taking care of ourselves. So some great ways to use it are to dilute it, put it on the bottoms of your feet. It is a hot oil. Make that flume roller that we all talk about. Or maybe take some in a veggie cap. So those are some great ways to incorporate oregano.
Okay, and then the next one is breathe. Okay, so a lot of people gravitate towards breathe. Breathe is also wonderful for a man who is grieving, because there are so many men who love that kind of cooling, minty sensation. Men grieve so differently than women do. So when you are going through loss or grief and you almost have that like panic attack sensation where you cannot catch your breath, breathe is literally known emotionally as the oil of breath. So when you get the wind knocked out of you, when you're going through the initial shock of grief or loss, you can bring your breathe, you can inhale it deeply, take deep breaths. This is something that just by applying it yourself and using yourself as a human diffuser. If someone just got bad news, a friend or a family member, you can apply it to yourself and apply it to them and let them smell it. You know, I think of, you know, back in the day, people used smelling salts. To me, this is like the doTERRA version of a smelling salt. Like when somebody is just going through that shock and that panic. You can put it on diffuser jewelry. That's a great way. Or if it's a child, you can put it on a stuffed animal and really just diffuse that and breathe that in when somebody needs both a literal and figurative breath.
I'm going to talk about one of my favorites, an oil that I use every single day, Deep Blue. This is actually associated with estrangement in the chapel. Oh, you got the big guy. I have the sticks everywhere. They're all over my house and my car, everywhere. But this is associated with estrangement, a family whose son just one day stopped speaking to them, and he was very involved with them, and they were very involved with him, and they have to check periodically to see if he's even still okay. Deep Blue is the soothing blend, and we all know we grab it for the back and the shoulder and the knee and that kind of stuff, but it also soothes our weary souls, because grief just makes you bone tired. I keep saying this, but we don't sleep well. We don't take care of ourselves. it just soaks into your joints, and it helps us feel supported when we use our Deep Blue. It helps you shore you up. That's a big thing that goes through this book, is being shored up and supported. It helps you feel peaceful and able to heal, which is so important, to be open to the healing portion of grief. We think about it for physical pain, like I said, but it helps with grief and it helps with anger. So, I love my Deep Blue sticks. I just said that. I use them all the time. First thing in the morning. Now I feel like I can't get out of bed without my Deep Blue. But another great way to use Deep Blue is to diffuse it. And people don't think to do this, but it is an excellent oil to diffuse. So I always say that when someone in my house is sort of mad at the world and they're just in a bad mood and they don't even have a real good reason for it, I love to diffuse Deep Blue, and I love to diffuse it at bedtime also. So you think about anger and the anger portion of grief, which I talked about with my brother, how angry I was. Then that's a great oil to pull for that. It's Deep Blue. It's also great for the men too, because I always say Deep Blue gets the men for sure.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is DigestZen. Would you ever in a million years think of using DigestZen for grief or loss or trauma? So think about it. If you have gone through any type of loss or grief, you're going to be on one side of the spectrum. Either you're going to overeat emotionally, like just random bad choices, right? Quick, you don't feel like cooking, you've lacked focus and you're just, trying to get by. Or you have no appetite. You could feel nauseous, you can have motion sickness. You are literally trying to digest what just happened to you. And well-meaning people will drop off casseroles, right? Now, Heidi and I both hail from an Italian neighborhood. There are only so many, big pots of pasta and casseroles of lasagna and tater tot casserole. I grew up in the Midwest in Chicago. I mean, that's what people will bring you. And that's really heavy and it's hard to digest that. So, if you're going through the emotion of digesting the change, yeah, you can actually diffuse it. You can put it on your belly button. You can kind of hover as you grab that bottle, just, smell it and inhale it, put it on your belly button, rub it over that gassy, bloated tummy, the waistband, put it in water and drink it. I think this is why DigestZen or fennel, which is in DigestZen, and peppermint, which is in DigestZen, you'll always see those mints at an Italian restaurant. And that's because historically they've been really good for I cannot use the word digestion. So I always want to say DigestZen. So keep that close by for yourself or loved ones when you're going through grief.
Oh, and I'd like to say that chapter is with when my daughter went to college. And then Sue Ann's 3 triplets went to college, and I was like, pull the book out, read the DigestZen chapter.
Yes, we both digested a lot of change, saying goodbye to our babies. Yes.
So now I'm going to talk about frankincense, and we know it's the king, right? It is the godly oil. It is the oil of truth, and it is also the oil of the Father. It'll help with a spiritual transition. So it is a great oil to diffuse if someone is in the process of passing away. But for us, it makes us feel closer to God. Especially when we're feeling alone in our grief, because grief can be so isolating. We always feel like we're the only person who's going through this. And you can use it when you want to feel supported. Frankincense helps us feel connected, and it also helps us feel insightful. Physically, it helps with cellular support, immune support. We keep going back to the immunity, but immunity drops so much when someone is grieving. And it also supports our nervous system, which gets just totally out of whack when we're out of whack, right? And it helps restore emotional balance, which so many of us need with all of the ups and downs. So you can apply this to your spine on daily. That's a great way that's the super highway, right, to the body. So put it there. You can put it in your palms and rub your palms together and just sort of breathe it in and take several deep breaths and get those aromatic benefits from it. And then one of my favorite ways to use frankincense is to add it to a warm bath with Epsom salt. This is especially after I've had a really hard workout, and I like to actually do deep blue and frankincense together, but that's what I love it in a bath. And I think your body just soaks it in, you breathe it in, and it's a great, great way to get it into your system.
Okay, I'm going to give us a little time check because we have about 10 minutes to go through 5 more oils. I want to leave about 5 minutes for questions. So the next one is lavender. So we know that lavender is all things calming, but did you ever realize that it's also known as the oil of effective communication? And so when you're going through grief, it's not just oftentimes your own journey, right? You have to deal with the dynamics of family, right? Of other loved ones who might be processing grief in a very different way. And you have to come together and make some difficult decisions, right? Your celebration of life and what that would look like to honor that person in your eyes versus maybe some siblings or other family members. So it can get a little tricky and complicated. So when there are heated conversations, when you're having to sort through belongings and make arrangements and things are just feeling extremely stressful, bring out your lavender. And of course, we know that we can use lavender in all 3 ways. So lavender is going to help you with clear and calm communication.
Whenever you ask a doTERRA person about oils for focus, the answer is always, always wild orange and peppermint, right? They even hand it out when we're all getting together. But lemon is the oil of focus. Who knew, right? This was another one that I was like, how is this going to fit in? After Atlee died, I just felt like I moved things around on my desk for a year. I had no idea until I was working on this oil class that lack of focus is a symptom of grief. And what I would have given to have lemon back then, it helps us feel joyful and dialed in and just motivated, and it gives us an energy boost. So you can also use it for seasonal threats for those allergies, to help detox your body, and it boosts your energy and helps you feel more alert. So some great ways that I like to use it, I keep it right by my kitchen sink to wash my fruits and vegetables, and I also add it to my water all the time. Just make sure it's not in a plastic container. You can diffuse it to clean your air. And you can even make a spray to clean your kitchen, your desk if you're having trouble focusing, all kinds of things. So those are some great ways to use some lemon and help with focus and joy.
So On Guard, we all love On Guard. It's a hero product in doTERRA. We all know it as the oil of protection to protect against germs, against microbes, against viruses, against fungi, right? And it is an amazing oil for all those reasons. When we are grieving, we are probably not sleeping well. Again, we already discussed we're not eating well, right? We're not managing our stress well. So that microbiome is off. Our whole system is off. And now we are under attack, right? So we are going to catch the slightest of germs. We're also now all of a sudden surrounded by a ton of people, right? The crowds of people, maybe at the funeral home, at the celebration of life, we're giving lots of hugs. And so it's sort of that unfortunate mix of situations, right? We're already run down and now we're going to be exposed to a lot of germs. So remember to use all of your On Guard products to shore you up and protect you against those outside influences, but also think of it from an emotional standpoint, protecting you. I like to think of it as my invisible, shield of protection, almost like my barrier to protect me against some unpleasantries. Sometimes we might feel like we're under attack when we have kind of succumbed to loss. We're going through that. We feel unguarded. We feel very exposed, right? Very vulnerable. So emotionally, you can use that every single day on your hands, on your feet. You can diffuse it, use it in your car. Just remember to use it in all the many different forms.
And I excited that I get to talk about peppermint. This is my #1 recommendation for grief. It is such a perfect oil for grief, and we all get a free bottle of it every year. It's perfect. Grief is everywhere, like we've said, and peppermint is the oil of a buoyant heart. And I love to sit in that for a second because grief is so heavy. And you might feel like your heart is just like this kettlebell, this weight just in your chest. And everything seems heavy and everything seems dark. It just feels like a weight that we can't put down. And peppermint brings us these feelings of resiliency and positivity and buoyancy. It helps lift your heart up. Like, what more can you ask for when you're going through this struggle? So, if you want to feel less burdened and maybe more invigorated with life, you can, like I said, with the frankincense, you can put peppermint in the palms of your hands and just breathe it in. Pop a beadlet. That's a great way to get a little zap of peppermint in your life. Apply it topically to maybe your pain points or your where you hold your tension. And you can diffuse it as well. My husband actually puts peppermint in his coffee every day. He froths it with his milk when he makes a coffee. So we are big peppermint fans, but anytime you can ask Sue Ann, anytime anybody asks me what's my number one recommendation, it is peppermint.
So fine, and that is true. Heidi is the peppermint queen. I attest to that. So whenever I use it now, I think this is the Heidi oil. So that's so much so.
I always say if you can only have one oil, it's peppermint.
Right. That's her desert island oil. So tea tree is the last one we're going to go over today, and that is the oil of energetic boundaries. And so if you are a mama of littles, you have probably used tea tree on the nape of their neck, in their shampoo and their conditioner to ward off. I'm going to be non-compliant here for a minute. Mapu, do I have permission? Creepy crawlies, right? When we're warding off lice or anything like that, right? Well, sometimes there are energetic parasites. Anyone ever had one of those in their life? And so, this is the chapter of the absent father, of having to say goodbye to maybe a relationship that was unpleasant, right? So not just the loss of a person in your life, but also it could be a divorce or a break of attachments or a break of ideals or a shift of life circumstances that you can pull out your tea tree to be a shield of energetic boundaries. So if you ever had a family member or a friend or a significant other walk away from your life and leave you feeling jilted or overlooked or rejected, maybe they're living, maybe they're deceased, but they're completely unavailable to you, right? And you might feel incomplete or lacking, inadequate, empty. These are all kind of the emotions why you would pull out tea tree to give you that energetic shield. Sometimes, guys, you might just feel a little off and you don't know why. And there might be some negativity in your sphere of influence, right? And so sometimes just when you're having a hard time getting out the door, you don't know what's holding you back. Like, I don't really want to go to this, I don't know, this crowded networking event or whatever it is. You can pull out that tea tree because there might be some kind of grief resurfacing for you. And that will give you a little bit of assurance in that situation. So I know we have gone through a lot. I want to make sure that I did not miss anything in the chat. Mapu, did you see anything that perhaps Heidi and I missed? There's lots of great comments. I love how people are piping in and talking about other ways that they use the oils. I did see somebody, hi Melody, thank you for saying that. She said she needs one of our books. Okay, so the best place to find it is on our website, oilsforgrief.com. Mapu, would you mind typing that in the chat? Oilsforgrief.com. You're going to do it? Okay, good. Thank you, Heidi. Oilsforgrief.com is the best place to find it. And let's see.
Everything in the chat is covered. I appreciate everybody sharing their thoughts there. I see you're going through it, huh, Sue Ann?
Yeah, I was just going through it. Oh, somebody said that frankincense and jasmine is intoxicating. I hope everyone was able to get the BOGO before it sold out today and get their free jasmine. Thank you for saying that about the dogs. Yeah, it's really a tough loss. because they give such unconditional love. Yeah, and back to 2020, we didn't talk about it too much, but it's okay to know that you might not still be okay. Post 2020, man, 2020 changed the world as we know it. And I think that we're still reeling from it and experiencing the effects of 2020, and probably will for a really long time. That was a time in our lives that we felt disconnected from a lot of people. People were fearful to hug and be around others. We couldn't conduct business as usual. Kids couldn't go to school. And we really suffered. A lot of mental health issues cropped up post 2020. And the way we do things is so different. And we personally know so many people have lost their livelihood, and a lot of people stopped even building doTERRA because they were staying home with children, or feeling like they had to go back to work. So it's changed our lives forever. And so we really focused on that in our first chapter. And really kind of acknowledge that. So this might be a great time, if you've lost touch with people, to it's okay to apologize and say, I'm sorry, I've been, a little bit MIA, but you're still in my mind and you're still in my heart, and just check in with people and resurface and say, man, it was hard for me. I mean, I personally, I gained a lot of weight during 2020. And, people went through really hard times emotionally. So that is, I mean, the kind of the ray of hope and the goodness that came out of that is, it was a universal thing. And so we all kind of went through it together. And so we need to give each other grace.
I love it. Thank you so much. I want to open it up for questions. Do you think this is a good time to
Absolutely.
let people unmute if you have a question?
Vaccine.
Buddy who needs to mute themselves.
Rivals.
Hold on just a sec. Yeah, there you go. Okay. I particularly liked going through the top 10 oils. I think that sometimes we make it difficult when we deal with grief because we're already stuck and we don't know what oils to use, right? But just remembering that all top 10 oils have so much power as we go through this process is amazing, because they're sold in our kits. Most people have them and enjoy them. They're simple oils, right? So thank you so much for running through those top 10 oils. We loved hearing your stories and the compassion and how you are passionate about sharing your stories and how to deal with grief with our oils. Okay, now a lot of people, you see that chat blowing up?
We see it. I'm sorry for everybody's loss. I really am. Thank you for being vulnerable to share. I'm very sorry, guys.
Does anybody have questions, comments, or anything they'd like to participate? Kimber, go ahead and unmute, honey.
Hi, I loved all the suggestions, just looking to see if anyone had a specific recommendation. My grandmother just lost her husband of 62 years a couple of weeks ago, and she's obviously really, really struggling with it, and it's affecting her sleep quite a bit. So I was thinking of making her like a lavender roller bottle, something very approachable, because she's never used oils or really anything like that before. But I was just wanting to see if anyone had any other specific recommendations for someone who's never used oils at all.
I think for me, the first oil that came to my mind, so I never second guess it because I think it's not me, I think it's the Holy Spirit. I would say rose. So rose is the very first oil that came to my mind, because when I think of like true love and your sweetheart and your partner, I think of just that. I think of rose. Rose is the oil of the heart. So I would be rubbing that over the heart. rubbing it, the roller on the,
Pulse
you know,
points?
the pulse points, sorry, and behind the ears, you know, just having her use that as a perfume. You could actually, I mean, if you are feeling strongly about lavender, I would honor that too. And maybe you make her a blend, and you can even just, you know, dump part of your Rose Touch into a 10 ml, you know, maybe a third of it, and then add some drops of lavender, and you could even add some frankincense. Frankincense I use when people are just so downtrodden and depressed and just heartbroken. That's a wonderful oil as well. And frankincense and lavender and rose will all help with sleep as well. The Serenity Sleep Stick, you know, just even that would be an amazing gift for grandma to rub on the bottoms of her feet, because I just think it's sweet and soft and powdery. And personally, it's given me so much relief to not only fall asleep, but stay asleep. And I've been dreaming more since I've been using the Serenity Sleep Stick.
That's what's going to matter. Serenity is, I kind of scanned her in my mind, and Serenity was the first thing I came up with, and it is lavender based too. So I feel like it goes along with your first impression. But also, I was thinking the stick too, because it's so easy to use, and it's not an oil. If she may be reluctant to use that, it's something that's super easy to use as well. My 9-year-old who hates sleep stole it immediately and keeps it in his room. So I think that would be a really easy daily thing that she could add to her routine, and would help calm her and help her sleep.
Thank you, Kimber, for asking that question. And I'm sorry to hear about your loss. Anybody else have questions or comments or want to contribute in any way? I am going to remove that pin and then see everybody on gallery screen. There we go. Now I see everybody. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you for showing up today to help us learn about the top 10 oils and grief and share your book. You guys got the link and the website if you care to purchase it and continue and want to continue learning about how oils can help you deal with this. Please feel free to follow each one of these girls on Instagram or Facebook, and even reach out to them if you have other questions for this process, because I know they would be more than happy to help you. So
We have
thank
Oils
you,
for Grief
everybody.
on Instagram and on Facebook as well. We have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oils for Grief on Instagram.
And Facebook.
Okay, and Facebook. I'm more of an Instagram girl, but you know. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. That's our time for today.
Thank you for having us.
You're
Yes, thank you.
welcome. Thank you so much, girls, for joining us. We will be back next week, Friday, to talk about February promotions. And now we're going to wrap it up with the raffle like we do every Friday. So, Sue Ann, could you give me a number, please, between 1 and 26?
17.
Okay. 30, 40, 50, 60, 17. Okay, and the winner of our oil is Denise. Congratulations. I am sending out a powerful, powerful oil. Lemon. You're going to love it. Denise, where are you joining us from?
I'm in Stockton, California.
Okay, very good. And who invited you?
Lynn Barrios.
Awesome. I will contact Lynn for your address because that's how it works. And then I
Okay.
will mail this out to you. Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Now you know how to use that, right, Denise? You can
Mhm.
use it for focus. Awesome.
Yes, I've
Congrats.
actually I've started putting it in my water during the day.
Oh, perfect.
It's wonderful. Very
helped.
good.
Yeah, awesome. All right, everybody, that's our time for today. Thank you so much. Mwah. Love you all. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you again.
Mapu.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
God bless.
ladies.